Get in on the secret. September is one of the best times to visit the Boardwalk Plaza Hotel in Rehoboth Beach. The weather is grand, and just steps from the sand, you can relax and experience the convenience of their oceanfront location right on the Rehoboth Beach Boardwalk. Enjoy Victoria's Restaurant, the charming Plaza Pub and room service. Visit boardwalkplaza.com and book your perfect getaway today, or call 800-33-BEACH for fast, friendly assistance. Thanks to the Boardwalk Plaza for being the Bridge Podcast Network sponsor.
Have you ever wondered why Christians raise their hands during worship at church or Christian concerts? If so, you've got the right podcast. I'm Mark Dickey.
And I'm Bert Miller.
This is the Why Do Christians podcast. Hey, welcome to the show. My name's Mark Dickey. I host the afternoon show on the Bridge radio station. My co-host is Pastor Bert Miller from Solid Ground Church. Bert, how are you today?
Man, Mark, throw your hands up in the Aya, wave them like you just don't care. Dickey, I'm doing great.
How would you spell Aya?
Well, I assumed it was Y-A at the end of it, wouldn't it be? So A-I-Y-A?
Aya?
So you were the R and replace it with...
Yeah, Aya.
Yeah, you replace the R with the Y-A.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
The proper diction of Aya,
yeah,
I believe.
Well, you guessed that my middle name is Aya, but you spelled it wrong, so it doesn't count.
Was it really?
I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay.
Well, we have a great episode planned for you. I have so many questions, honestly.
Rapid fire episode.
Rapid fire.
Let's go.
No, not so many questions.
Bring in the heat.
But you know what? We did get a question sent to us through the internet.
Okay. Good place for questions.
One of our recent episodes, Why Do Christians Get Baptized? Our friend Bruce emailed into the podcast, and he had a follow-up question about baptism.
Okay.
And I'm going to email Bruce back as well, but
Great.
I figured we could, maybe someone else was asking this question too.
Yeah.
So Bruce asked this question: if you are a Christian and have not been baptized, will you still go to heaven?
Ooh. Okay.
That's a pretty good question.
That's a really good question. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess my answer, and this is my answer, if I'm keeping it within the spirit of the episode of the baptism episode, which was, it depends on the church.
Right.
So not will you go to heaven, but just like the different churches are going to have different beliefs about that. So there are some churches that believe that you're not saved until you're baptized. Mm-hmm. That's a Church of Christ, the Restoration Movement, that type of thing. The majority of churches don't look at it that way, particularly within Protestantism, which we adhere. Baptism is symbolic of something that God's already done within you. So the water isn't what saves you. It's God bringing you from death to life. And so I would just say this with my theology of baptism, because and then again, it's just me personally speaking. I'm not
right.
Yeah. Okay. I would say, like, can a person go to heaven and not be baptized? Well, according to Jesus on the cross with the thief who, professed faith in him. Yes.
Oh yeah.
Like, that guy wasn't baptized. But I would say that if you are a Christian and you're choosing not to be baptized, you are walking in disobedience to the faith and the scriptures. And so I think you have no good reason not to be.
Right.
And so, like, if somebody says to me, like, I want to be a Christian, but I'm not going to be baptized, what I would say is, why? Because you got such a clear command of Christ, like you're choosing to intentionally disobey the Lord, which would give me real pause. And so if that's where somebody goes, well, I'm uncomfortable with the water, I'm uncomfortable with being in front of people or what have you, I would just say that obedience to the Lord is worth whatever discomfort you may feel in that.
That's a good answer.
Oh, thanks, man.
I love the reference to the thief on the cross. So, like, literally somebody receives Christ, whether it's, in their dying moments,
right,
whether they're on a hospital bed or on a cross,
right.
If they don't get baptized, that's not going to keep them out of heaven.
Correct.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, but that's not what this episode's about.
Oh, rapid fire. Let's keep it going. Keep them going.
But thank you, Bruce, for emailing in. And whenever you have questions about the podcast, we will do our best to email you back. We will. Sorry.
He'll email you if he feels like it.
If I feel like it.
If he's got enough time in the old schedule.
Yeah, no. We appreciate your questions. podcast@wearethebridge.org is the email. Just throw Why Do Christians in the subject line, because we use that email for a few different podcasts on the Bridge Podcast Network.
Very cool.
But today we're talking about why do Christians raise their hands in worship? And I grew up in a very traditional Christian home. And when I just remember watching, I don't even remember what channel it was, but they have those infomercials for like CD collections.
Oh yeah, like John Tesh leading worship and stuff. Yeah.
So I just remember, is it Rich Mullins who
Maranatha was one of them, right?
Well, was it Rich Mullins that wrote Awesome God?
Yeah, it was.
I remember hearing, "Our God is an awesome God." And there's just this stadium full of people with their hands up, and I'm like, just pure culture shock.
Yeah.
What on earth is this thing? and meanwhile, this is probably in the 2000s that I saw it, and the noughts, if you will.
The what?
The noughts.
Okay.
The 80s, the 90s, and the noughties. Because I think it's in Europe, they call it that.
That's a term for the early 2000s.
The zeros.
That sounds like it should have come from Boston.
The noughties.
Smarties there with the naughties.
Yeah, I saw a commercial in the noughties.
Yeah. Now we're going to go to Dunkin' Donuts. Okay. Got it. Okay.
Get some chowder. All right. So, yeah, it was like early 2000s.
Ask not what you're drinking. That's why I'm hearing it. Okay. I'm sorry.
Rein it in. All right. So it was early 2000s. I was watching this commercial, and that's an older song at this point.
Yes.
And so it's already outdated to me. My little child ears are like, what is this music? This is like old people music, but I've never heard this old people music.
And they're really excited.
And why are they raising their hands? What is this?
Okay.
And so that's why I'm really excited to talk about this, because I personally remember the culture shock of what are people doing with it's like Will Ferrell in Talladega Nights when he's on
what do I do with my hands
when he's on the interview. Sir, put your hands down.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's interesting. So this Christian practice of raising their hands during worship, it's neat because when you're going to the scriptures, you can find passages about people lifting their hands, but usually it actually doesn't have to do with during a song. It actually has to do with prayer. So I'll give you some examples. So like in Exodus 9:29, there's a moment where it says, Moses replied, "When I have gone out of the city, I will spread out my hands in prayer to the Lord. The thunder will stop and there'll be no more hail, so that you will know the earth is the Lord's." And it was a prayer posture, people like lifting their hands to the Lord. Another one would be probably most famously where Paul says in 1 Timothy 2:8, he says, "I want men everywhere to pray, lifting up holy hands without anger or disputing." There's stuff with it in the Psalms too. But usually it was a posture of prayer. And the reason was it predates Christianity, it predates Judaism. It's actually an ancient Near Eastern practice, which is where the area where our faith began so many thousands of years ago. And what would happen was in the ancient Near East, if you were a person of lesser social, political status, what have you, basically if you were a person who was viewed as inferior to someone else, what they would do is when they met someone who was considered a superior, they would raise their hands up as a sign of respect.
Oh.
So they would like lift them up, so say like, you're above me. When they bowed before a king, they would lift their hands up. You can actually find different hieroglyphs and pictures and stuff where you've got people before Pharaoh or what have you lifting their hands up. And another part of it was they took that viewpoint and they actually adapted it to their worship of gods, because what they would say was, all right, like the God is above me, so I'm lifting my hands to show the superiority of the God. And so it's not that it's pagan in root in the sense of like, oh man, Christians are lifting their hands and they're lifting them to other gods. No, it's just the origination of the practice had to do with a humility that people realized should be directed towards seeking the divine. Does that make sense?
It's sort of like giving the president a high five.
Well, no.
Like you should probably shake his hand.
No, more like the hands are empty, and so like by lifting your hands, like you're lower than the other person.
Okay.
And there are other places you can find too, where like they'd lift their hands up, and sometimes they would put a gift in the hands, so they would like lift the gift up to the. It's a podcast, so you guys can't see what I'm doing, but I'm enacting what I'm saying right now. So I'm lifting my hands.
They're up there.
Yeah, like and they're not coming down, Mark. The rest of the podcast, if they fall asleep, so be it. But like what they would lift the gift up to the king or who have you, and so it wasn't so much a high five as it was just this means of saying I'm less than, or another one would be surrender. Like I have nothing in my hands. I am lowering myself before you. I'm on like your mercy, that type of thing. And so when that transitions to prayer, it is this idea that the Lord is above all of us. You know, I approach him empty-handed. I approach him with respect. I offer up my prayer. I offer up my worship in a way that's is a gift. You know, it's an offering of praise, what have you. But that's kind of where it originated. That's not usually what people are thinking about when they lift their hands now, but that's where it started.
Well, yeah, and so if I, at least in my understanding of world history, which is not fantastic, but so it's a very old practice.
Yeah.
But I would say raising your hands in worship, in my mind, that started in like maybe the 70s at the earliest.
I don't know about that.
Like in modern worship, like were traditional churches in the 1500s raising their hands in worship?
You know, I don't know. I mean, certainly it's linked with what would be called the contemporary Christian worship movement. I have a hard time believing that they came up with that just because of how long there have been Christians.
Right.
Although certainly, you know, the contemporary movement was about connecting to personal experience, right? So like the songs became adapted to speak a more common language that people could understand, to reflect a music style that was more resonant with the people who were singing it. And so it would make sense to me within that vein of personal experience that interactivity would transition in that vein. Okay.
Is there any kind of purpose to doing it?
Yeah. Well, again, I think it's going to depend on the person, but there are, you know, when people do it now, there's a number of reasons why. You know, some people, they do it and we wouldn't espouse this, but some people do it just because everybody else does, right? Mm-hmm. You know, so that they're in a church where people are lifting hands. Well, you know, I don't want to be awkward. I'll lift my hands too. That's not a good reason to do that, but that happens.
I've only lifted my hands in worship maybe twice in my life, and that's kind of the reason.
Really?
Yeah, it's just I thought, okay, I'll try this, but it just didn't resonate with me as a form of worship.
Gotcha.
And I'm not condemning people who do it.
Sure.
Like,
I'm a hand raiser. I am. I love raising my hands in worship, and again, but like you just hit the nail on the head. I was around it, so I did, but it isn't necessarily me.
Yeah.
And if we were to take it back, you know, I think we talked about this also in our Why the Christians Worship episode, but this idea that like a big thing that the Lord is after is intention of the heart, right? So, you know, there are places in the prophets where he's like, I don't like your songs because your hearts aren't right before me, right? And like you think of like Jesus with the woman at the well in John 4, where he's like, God is seeking people to worship him in spirit and in truth. So I think true worship has less to do with things that you're doing with your arms and hands and more to do with the posture of your heart towards the Lord. But that doesn't mean that raising the hands are bad, because it's certainly part of our heritage. So, you know, other reasons people may raise their hands, you know, if there's this connection, you can think of, I've known folks who they would say like, listen, you know, you have your kids and they lift their hands up by you, like to be picked up, like daddy, please lift me up, you know, that type of thing. And for them, they're lifting their hands out to the Lord, like, hey, Father, would you give me an experience with you in this place? Would you meet with me right now? Would you let me engage with you in some way? And so there's this sort of innocence, childfulness about it. Others, maybe there's a freedom and celebration about it, sort of like a, you know what, God has brought me through something. I'm raising my hands in victory. I'm raising my hands because nothing is holding me down or back anymore, that type of thing. So there's like just a moment of triumph, kind of like, you know, you think of, you know, you watch a team win the Super Bowl and people sort of throw their hands up in the air in victory sometimes.
Right.
And that can be a part of it. Like, hey, like the darkness has lost, Christ has taken hold of me. And this is a moment where I interact with that. Another one would be maybe there's just a vulnerability and a surrender. Like, okay, back to that idea of the lower person lifting their hands up to the social, king or what have you, and they're showing like their hands are empty. Like you think about, when you see in the movies, hopefully you've never had this experience in real life, but in the movies where somebody, there's like pulls a gun or what have you, and people lift their hands up in the air to show like, I'm not armed, I've got nothing on me, that type of thing. And some people may like raise their hands in just the sort of place of like, God, I've got nothing. It's all yours. I hold nothing back. I'm like it. Huh. So there's this vulnerability about it. And still there might be other reasons that are the worshiper's own.
Right. So yeah, I've never been a hand raiser in church, but there is something that a friend of mine, when I was new in my walk, helped me with in kind of the posture is not hands up, but hands out, like kind of open-handed in front of me.
Like you're lifting a heavy TV?
Like you're lifting a heavy TV. And
Okay.
It's funny that you say it's like you're lifting because the friend of mine, he said, I like to, he grew up carrying firewood, which was so funny because it was the same for me. Our family heated our house with the fireplace, and it was the kids' job every day to make sure the wood ring was full. And so a couple times a day we'd run out to the barn and get arm loads. We'd put one arm out and start loading these split logs onto our arms, and we'd try and carry as many as we could so we could take less trips through the cold.
Okay. Yeah.
back to the house. And I would just load up my arms with this firewood. And my friend said, like, when I'm worshiping God, I like to hold my arms out as if I'm holding, a huge just a bunch of firewood. And I imagine and I think about all of my burdens, the things that I'm carrying, the things that I'm struggling with, and I'm holding them out like as an offering, if you will, to God. And kind of thinking of that Matthew 11, the come to me all who are weary and burdened, I will give you rest.
Yeah, I think it's 11:28.
Take my yoke. Basically, God, can you take my burdens? Lord, would you lift what's heavy in my life from me and break my heart for what breaks yours?
Oh, okay.
And so that's kind of the hand gesture that you'll see me doing, but my hands aren't up. They're down, but my palms are up at least.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's beautiful though. I did not grow up in a church that did that kind of expression during worship. And I remember the first time that I ever saw it, I was in a church and I saw people lift their hands, and I was like, this is weird. Like it's one of the things where it's like almost like antenna, where like everybody's old enough to remember TV antenna. You had to have the two bars, right? And you move them, right? And it was like they had to move their arms in a certain way. I didn't know. But at the end of the day, I think it's an expression of worship. One thing I would say though, I think this is important to realize, like, because it would be easy to pivot one way or the other and be like, all right, hand raising is great or hand raising is bad. Okay, unless you can make sure that your heart motives are completely pure every time, you shouldn't raise your hands. Well, you're never going to then.
Right.
I had a buddy years ago. He was at a Casting Crowns concert, and I forget the name of the lead singer of Casting Crowns.
Mark Hall.
There he is. Shout out to Mark Hall. I'm sure he's listening to this. But anyway,
of course.
They had a moment where the concert began, I think, and he said, hey, listen, turn to the person who's standing next to you and just say to them, hey, you're not cool. All right. And so they did that. They're all going around and people are giggling. Oh, you're not cool. I guess, okay. Now that you know that, nothing should hold you back from worshiping the Lord passionately because you're not cool. You don't have to impress anybody.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But I think there's something there. Like how many of us maybe you're listening to this and you love the idea of raising your hands in worship. All right. But, and you're in a church space where that wouldn't throw everyone in the room off if you did that. Like if you're in a place and like, it's just not how they do it. Am I telling you like you never can't? No, but you want to be like considerate to the people around you in worship because you want the eyes to go to the Lord, not you. But if you're in a place where, that's something that people do and you always want to, but you're afraid, like, what if I do? People are going to look at me or whatever. Hey, you're not cool. Like, it's okay. like worship the Lord as your heart is so moved in the passion that he gives.
Does that apply to the, I guess it's Matthew 6, about when you pray, like when you worship, like don't do it for the eyes of other people, but do it in private. And so not that, all right, it's worship time. Everyone go to their little cubicles so that we can worship in private. But
again, like that's we run the danger of flying into introspection that's undoable, right? So like, with the rebuke of the Pharisees in the Sermon on the Mount there, with like the Pharisees who they say all these things because they love the places of being honor and they love heaping up these words. And he says Jesus goes, don't be like the Gentiles who keep heaping up words and words and words because they think they'll be heard for their many words. And Gentiles there means like people who don't know God, And his point is like, just say what you need to say. Like God already knows before you even ask. And so there's an authenticity about any and all of this. I just think sometimes what happens is we want to do right by God. And I think that's indicative of the Spirit's movement on our hearts. Like we couldn't want to do right by God if the Spirit hadn't moved us. But what happens is we start to look at ourselves and look, okay, I could do this better. I could do that better. And so what I'm going to do is just do nothing. And I think it would be, I think it would be better to worship, as your heart is so moved, and run the risk of being wrong about it than doing nothing.
Well, there it is. That's why Christians raise their hands in worship. And if you had maybe you turned this episode on thinking, oh, they're finally going to answer my question about that and this specific situation, and then we didn't. Well, let us know. podcast@wearethebridge.org is the email. Just be sure to put Why Do Christians in the subject line so our people who handle the website email make sure that Bert and I get it. But we love hearing your questions, whether it's a question about the topic we're talking about, or maybe you have a suggestion for another episode for us to do in the future. Let us know. podcast@wearethebridge.org. And we appreciate you so much for checking out the episode.